Hello everyone, I'm the Masked Analyst. The last video that I made was a bit of a departure from what I usually talk about. I urged President Obama to make an apology to the Iranian people, and I asked him to back that apology with a gift. This was no ordinary gift that I wanted him to bestow upon the Iranian people. I wanted him to set up a fund to help 5,000 Iranians make the Hajj to Mecca every year for the next 26 years. This might seem like madness, but I attached one condition to the gift that changed it from a rose of appeasement into a dagger aimed at the heart of the Iranian thugocracy. If you've not yet watched my previous video, you should do so now. Would my proposal to sponsor Iranians going on a Hajj violate the First Amendment's Establishment Clause? This clause states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. I don't claim to be an expert on this clause, and all I can do is give you a definitive maybe yes, maybe no, but I really don't think it will violate this clause. There's only one case that I know of that may shed light on this, and I'm referring to Lamont versus Woods, which was heard before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in 1991. This case involved the constitutionality of funding sectarian schools in foreign countries with American taxpayer dollars. One of the programs under the United States Agency for International Development is the American Schools and Hospitals Abroad program. This program gives taxpayers money to individuals and organizations within the U.S., who then use that money to sponsor schools overseas that promote American ideas and values. Clearly, this program is intended to promote our foreign policy interests by planting seeds of goodwill abroad. But what happens if these foreign schools are overtly religious? Would funding them violate the Constitution's Establishment Clause? This was the question that was put before the Lamont Court. The court examined the history of the Establishment Clause to determine its true meaning, and it found that the history was muddled. It appears that there were two motivations behind the Establishment Clause. Number one, the Establishment Clause was written to prevent the establishment of a national religion. And number two, the Establishment Clause was written to prevent taxpayers from being forced to pay money to organizations that promoted religions that they didn't believe in. Clearly, funding sectarian schools within the U.S. would violate both these principles behind the Establishment Clause. But spending money on sectarian schools outside the U.S. does not aid in the establishment of a national religion. It may force taxpayers to aid a religion that they don't approve of, but is this permissible if it advances our national interests as well? The court urged a flexible approach and noted that some support of religious organizations that would be clearly unconstitutional within the U.S. might pass constitutional muster if it supported foreign policy objectives. There was no easy test, and the court said that each situation must be decided on its own merits. The court noted, traditional Establishment Clause standards are flexible enough to accommodate any urgent dictates of United States foreign policy. I'll post the key passages to this decision in the sidebar, and I encourage you to read them. I'm just going to read you the most important statement. I'm going to leave out a word or two from the statement just to make the flow go a little more smoothly, but you can read it in the sidebar. Therefore, in our view, once it has been established that a particular grantee is pervasively sectarian, the government should be permitted to demonstrate some compelling reason why the usually unacceptable risk attendant on funding such an institution should, in the particular case, be borne. In other words, the court was not taking a hardline approach. It took a flexible approach. It said, yeah, there might be a use that would be viewed unconstitutional if it were funded within the U.S. It might be otherwise unconstitutional, but if it serves a compelling governmental interest, for example, a national security interest, then it may be constitutional to fund a religious organization overseas. So that's what the Second Circuit Court of Appeals decided. Now, I also found another interesting article that was written by Jessica Powley-Hayden, and it was an award-winning article written for the Georgetown Law Review about the Establishment Clause. And it discussed this in more detail. I'll post a link to that in the sidebar as well. And she notes that the United States Agency for International Development has several programs in Indonesia that are designed to compete with radical Islamic movements to win the hearts and minds of the local population. For example, U.S. aid funds the Liberal Islam Network's Religion Intolerance radio show. It also sponsors a program that develops flyers that are distributed outside of mosques. Now, these flyers target the pious Muslim male population in Indonesia by using Quranic verses and Islamic symbols to discuss messages of tolerance and peace. These programs end up promoting moderate Islam as a way of inoculating the population against more virulent anti-Western versions of Islam. Hayden's paper goes into a very long and detailed analysis into how the courts have interpreted the Establishment Clause and how they should interpret the Establishment Clause. And her bottom line is this, and I'm quoting now from her paper. If the court finds that the U.S. funds to promote a certain program infringes the Establishment Clause and would be unconstitutional within the United States, this need not mean it would automatically find the program unconstitutional. Instead, the court could employ a balancing analysis, much like that suggested in Lamont, to determine if the program should be upheld. First, the court should determine if there is a compelling national security interest. Second, assuming that the national security interest is compelling, the program should be narrowly tailored to serve that compelling governmental interest. So under this test, I think my program does pass constitutional muster. The intent of the program is to develop better relations with the Iranian people by pressuring the current regime to hold new elections. Replacing the current regime is one of our most important national security issues. Iran is implacably hostile to the United States and Israel, and its nuclear ambitions pose a threat to many nations within the Middle East. It seems likely that either Israel or the United States will be at war with Iran within a year if the current regime remains in power. So it is absolutely essential that we do everything we can to bring about regime change. Of course, having new internationally monitored elections doesn't guarantee that the current regime will be swept out of office. It is possible that Ahmadinejad could win, but that doesn't seem likely. And it's also possible that whoever replaces Ahmadinejad may be just as hostile to the U.S. and Israel and may be just as intent on developing their nuclear program as Ahmadinejad is. This is a possibility that we can't avoid. But even so, we have a compelling interest to do what we can to promote a democratic movement that could potentially bring about a change that will enable us to settle our differences without going to war. So there's very compelling national security interest justifying my plan to fund Iranians to go on the Hajj. Now, is my plan narrowly tailored? I think so. First, it really doesn't promote religion per se. Those who will be beneficiaries are already devout Muslims, so we will not be spending money to convert people to Islam. Second, the program is aimed at establishing better relations with the Iranian people by acknowledging our past transgressions. And third, the program will last for 26 years and then will come to an end. Those 26 years have a special significance because that is how long the Iranian people had to endure the Shah, who we brought to power by engineering the overthrow of Mossadegh. Since the program is for a compelling national interest and it is narrowly focused, it should be constitutional. Okay, enough about the constitutionality of my proposal. In the next part of this video, I want to discuss why I think this proposal actually has a decent chance of bringing down the current Iranian regime. So please stay tuned for part 2.